What I decided to research for this project was the music of Scotland, due to my heritage tracing back to Scotland. Some background on Scotland is that it is a constituent part of the United Kingdom with its own personal government. It used to be a part of the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom ruled over them until they gained independence. During the Roman occupation of Britain, Scotland was inhabited by the Picts, which was the original people of Scotland and was considered a fearsome land. They traditionally lived in black houses, which were stone cottages with thatched roofs. An event called the Clearances caused the forceful removal of several Scottish people, and many fled to North America and Ireland. The early language of Scotland, used in most Scottish folk music, was Gaelic. We have several instruments from Scotland, including the Highland bagpipes, the harp, or how they call it, the clairsac, the violin, the fiddle, the keyboard, which is the piano and spinet, the military instruments, and voice. First, we have the Highland bagpipes. Few instruments are more synonymous with Scotland than the bagpipe. It first arrived in Scotland in 1400. The great Highland bagpipes were once instruments of war, but today they are featured in celebrations and ceremonies. The bag itself is traditionally made of animal skin and covered with the clan tartan. Other variations, such as the border bagpipes and Scottish small pipes. The border bagpipes are often played for dancing, while the Scottish small pipes were popular for indoor play. Then we have the harp or clairsac, much older than the bagpipes, and they were depicted in carvings by the Picts, the original people of Scotland. The harp was the primary instrument in traditional Gaelic courts, which underlies the sophistication of the Gaelic court. The harp remained an important aspect of court music until the 18th century. Now we have the violin, or as they call it, the fiddle. The modern violin has been popular in Scotland since the 17th century. It became a central part of Scottish traditions as the fiddle. It also played a key role in early Scottish folk songs. The piano and spinet. These are primarily domestic instruments, and they were vital to the education of both upper and middle class Scottish women. Their popularity caused an explosion of music stores and instrument importers to come to Scotland. Once composers arrived in Scotland, they began writing melodies for the piano. Pianos were the instrument of choice, with square pianos being the most popular. However, spinets were smaller and less expensive than the piano. Now we have our military instruments. Music through the centuries has been used to raise the morale of soldiers, including the traditional music of Scotland, which is why a primary use of the bagpipe was for marching. Bands comprising orchestral instruments grew in importance for British Army ceremonial events in Scotland in the second half of the 19th century. Large bass drums signal information to other musicians and serve as emblems. Key bugles were developed around 1810 from the military bugle, which was also a signaling instrument and were used in bands for evening entertainment. Brass instruments came into the mainstream through both military and civilian bands and included instruments like the sarpent, which is a left-handed instrument. Now we have the voice, which is the oldest and most universal instrument. Robert Burns remains one of Scotland's most famous songwriters, especially for voice. He collaborated with James Johnson to publish the Scots Musical Museum, a collection of Scotland's most famous folk tunes. One particular type of vocal music, was walking songs. Walking songs were used for the walk, which was a laborious technique to finish newly woven tweed. The walk was often accompanied by singing, which served as a means of expression and support for the women involved. Some songs were slow for the beginning and end of the process, while others were joyful and quick, most never having a specified length. As the material softened and shrank, the leader would measure and determine if another song was needed. Traditional walking songs added together multiple aspects of life, including social, economic, and historical. The performance I decided to research was called the Valley of the Day Review, the best of Highland piping. This occurred in Littlefield Celtic Center, Mount Vernon, Washington, on February 11, 2017. We had 3 performers, which included Stuart Little, Willie McCallum, and Angus McColl. Each of these performers has received the Glenfiddich Award multiple times, which is a competition in Perthshire, Scotland. This event is by invitation only, where world-class pipers compete. Performers were true to culture, wearing kilts and having an emblem on the bagpipe. They included marching, a traditional use of the Highland bagpipes, in their performance. I, ha- I had several positive impressions from this performance. They all included traditional songs, which were accompanied by marching, an original feature of traditional piping. They added marching and stomping to add own natural percussive elements. Their songs were traditional melodies with modern elements. The narrator, which they had, explained how bagpipes were played, and each performer was introduced by this narrator. And they each played different songs with varying tempos. Then we have the performer's perspective. So we have Stuart Little. He explained the elements of the songs he was performing, including the use of grace notes in both modern and traditional elements. He expressed talent by explaining the song he was about to play included a lot of grace notes, which are fun but difficult. Willie McCallum emphasized the connection between his performed pieces. He played his own composition, which was written to honor his hometown, Campbellton, which shows his love for his home. Then we have Angus MacColl, which played both his own compositions and compositions by relatives, particularly his uncle. He had a variety of tunes he had prepared, and he chose which to play based on his passion and what he truly enjoyed, including a song his father wrote for his mother. Then we have the audience perspective, including my own. From my perspective, the bagpipe seems to be a very difficult instrument to play, and the ability of these musicians to memorize and play challenging music is particularly impressive. The audience participation in the recording, including stomping along to the beat, showed the enthusiasm and connection the audience had to the music. Although each song had similar formats, each musician added his own style, making each performance unique. Music as a cultural product. Although time continues, people of all cultures, including Scotland, can use music to honor their heritage. The use of traditional instruments with modern materials is a great example of how we can honor our heritage through music. Another example is mixing traditional sound with contemporary sounds to make traditional folk tunes more vital and modern, such as adding modern guitar and electronic elements to the traditional bagpipe and fiddle. Another example is honoring both tradition and modernity by playing both traditional and modern tunes, and maybe even combining the two. And here are some of my references which I took from to compile both my paper and my presentation.